The transport ship glided smoothly into the docking bay of Zenith Prime, the largest neutral station in the known galaxy. Princess Lyria stood near the viewing window, her hands clasped behind her back in the formal pose she had learned as a child. Everything about her posture screamed royalty and control. Her purple skin had the perfect steady glow that showed no emotion. Her eyes remained forward, unblinking. "We have arrived, Your Highness," Ambassador Vex said from behind her. The old Kaleth warrior kept his voice neutral, but she could hear the pride in it. This was an important mission. The Kaleth Empire was here to negotiate trade agreements with several younger species, including the humans who had only just discovered faster-than-light travel. Lyria nodded once. "Prepare the delegation. I want no mistakes." She had reviewed the files on all the species they would meet. The humans were interesting in a primitive sort of way. They came from a dangerous planet where the gravity was heavy, the weather was violent, and the animals were deadly. Yet they were not particularly strong or fast compared to other species. Their technology was crude. The report said they would not be difficult to negotiate with. The station's diplomatic corps met them at the airlock. A tall Zentari official bowed low. "Welcome, Princess Lyria. We are honored by your presence. If you would follow me, we have prepared quarters for your delegation." The walk through the station corridors gave Lyria her first look at the variety of species present. She saw the insectoid Vrix, the crystalline Sharu, even a group of the massive Dronir who had to duck through doorways. All of them moved aside when her delegation approached. As they should. The Kaleth Empire commanded respect. They reached the diplomatic wing where the security briefing would take place. All visiting dignitaries had to attend. It was a requirement of the neutral station to ensure everyone understood the protocols. Lyria found it tedious, but necessary. The briefing room held representatives from a dozen different species. Lyria took her position at the front, her attendants arranging themselves behind her in perfect formation. She scanned the room with casual disinterest until her eyes landed on a figure standing near the wall, a human. He wore a simple military uniform, dark blue with minimal decoration. He was shorter than most species in the room, but something about the way he stood caught her attention. His posture was relaxed but alert. His hands rested easily at his sides. His face showed neither aggression nor fear, just calm awareness. Her skin flickered, just for a moment. A slight shift from steady purple to a warmer shade. She forced it back immediately, grateful that none of her attendants seemed to notice. What was that? The briefing began. A Zentari security chief explained the station rules, emergency procedures, and diplomatic protocols. Lyria barely heard the words. Her eyes kept drifting back to the human soldier. He listened to the briefing with complete attention, occasionally making notes on a small device. When the main briefing ended, the security chief announced that protection detail assignments would be given individually. Lyria waited as other delegates met their assigned security personnel. Finally, her name was called. "Princess Lyria of the Kaleth Empire, your protection detail will be Sergeant Jake Morrison of Earth." The human soldier stepped forward. He stopped at a respectful distance and gave a polite nod. Not a bow, a nod, as if they were equals. "Princess Lyria," he said. His voice was steady and calm. "I'm Sergeant Jake Morrison. I'll be coordinating your security during your stay on Zenith Prime. If you have any concerns or specific requirements, please let me know." Lyria opened her mouth to give her standard acknowledgement. The words stuck in her throat. Up close, she could see that his eyes were a strange brown color, warm and direct. He met her gaze without challenge, but also without looking away. There was something in his expression that she could not name, something that made her twin hearts beat faster. Yes. That is..." She stopped, cleared her throat, tried again. "That is acceptable." Behind her, she heard one of her attendants draw in a sharp breath. She never stumbled over words. Never. She was Princess Lyria, trained since birth in the art of perfect speech and perfect composure. Jake seemed not to notice her difficulty. He pulled out his device and began explaining the security protocols in simple, clear terms, where she could go freely, which areas required escort, emergency signals, contact procedures. His explanation was professional and thorough. Lyria focused on controlling her skin tone. It wanted to shift colors, wanted to show the confusion and strange nervousness she felt. She held it steady through sheer force of will, but it took all her concentration. She barely registered what Jake was saying. "Do you have any questions, Princess?" Jake asked. "No. No questions." The words came out too quickly. "All right, then. I'll be posted outside your quarters tonight. If you need anything, just contact me through your comm device." He gave another polite nod. "Have a good evening." He turned and walked away with that same calm confidence. Lyria watched him go, unable to look away until he disappeared through the doorway. "Your Highness?" Ambassador Vex stepped closer, his voice low. "Are you well?" "Of course." She straightened her spine and lifted her chin. "Why would I not be? You seemed uncertain. That is unlike you." "I am perfectly fine." She kept her voice cold and controlled. "The human simply caught me off guard with his informal manner. Nothing more." But that was a lie, and she knew it. Something about that human had shaken her in a way she did not understand. The way he carried himself, the way he looked at her. Not with fear or excessive respect, but with simple courtesy, as if her title meant less than her person. That night, in her private quarters, Lyria stood before the window looking out at the stars. Her attendants had finally left her alone. She let her skin shift through colors freely, something she only did in complete privacy. Confusion, curiosity, and something else she refused to name. She thought about Sergeant Jake Morrison, about his calm voice and steady eyes, about the way her carefully trained composure had crumbled the moment he spoke to her. It made no sense. He was human. A species barely advanced enough for space travel. She was princess of the Kaleth Empire, trained warrior and diplomat. Yet when he looked at her, something inside her chest felt tight and warm. Her hands had wanted to shake. Her voice had failed her. All her years of training had vanished like smoke. She pressed her hand against the cool window and made a decision. She would avoid him as much as possible. This was clearly some strange reaction to meeting a new species. It would pass. It had to pass. But even as she thought it, she knew it was another lie. Because part of her, a part she did not want to acknowledge, was already looking forward to seeing him again. Lyria closed her eyes and tried to meditate, to bring herself back to the perfect calm center she had maintained all her life. But sleep was a long time coming. And when it finally came, she dreamed of brown eyes and a quiet voice that somehow felt louder than any warrior's battle cry. The morning came too quickly. Lyria had barely slept, and now she stood in her formal diplomatic robes preparing for the first day of negotiations. Her attendants fussed over her appearance while she stared at her reflection. Her skin showed perfect royal purple again. Her expression was smooth and controlled. No one would see the chaos beneath. "The security escort is waiting outside, Your Highness," her lead attendant said. Of course he was. Lyria took a breath and walked to the door. It opened to reveal Jake standing at attention. He wore the same simple uniform, but this time she noticed he carried no visible weapons. Most security personnel were armed heavily. He had nothing but a small communication device on his belt. "Good morning, Princess," he said with that same polite tone. "Ready for the tour?" All new diplomatic delegations received tours of the station facilities before negotiations began. Lyria had been dreading it all night because it meant spending hours near him, but she could not show that. She nodded regally and stepped into the corridor. Jake fell into step slightly behind and to her left, close enough to respond to danger, far enough to be respectful. His presence felt like heat against her back. She kept her eyes forward and her hands still. The tour guide was a cheerful Zentari who talked constantly about the station's history and features. Lyria tried to pay attention. She needed to understand this place, but her awareness kept drifting to the human walking beside her. They visited the trading floors where merchants from across the galaxy displayed their goods. Jake moved through the crowds smoothly, his eyes constantly scanning. When a large droneer accidentally bumped into Lyria, Jake was there instantly, steadying her with a brief touch to her elbow. The contact lasted less than a second, but her skin flared bright orange before she could stop it. "Are you all right, Princess?" Jake asked. "Fine, perfectly fine." She forced her color back to purple. Behind her, she heard her attendants whispering. They had seen. They knew something was wrong with her. The tour continued to the observation decks, the medical facilities, the cultural centers. At each location, Lyria tried to focus on the information. Instead, she found herself noticing small things about Jake. The way he held doors for people without making it seem like a big gesture, how he spoke to the tour guide with the same respect he showed her. When a maintenance worker nearly dropped a heavy container, Jake stepped forward and helped without being asked. During a rest period in one of the lounges, Ambassador Vex pulled her aside. "Your Highness, you seem distracted. Is the human guard causing problems?" "No, he is adequate." "Then why do you keep watching him?" Lyria felt her skin warm. She had been watching him, constantly. "I am merely observing human behavior. They are a new species to me." Vex looked unconvinced, but said nothing more. When they resumed the tour, Lyria tried harder to ignore Jake's presence. It did not work. The incident happened on the third day. They were touring the diplomatic conference halls when an ambassador from the Kroth Collective confronted them in the corridor. The Kroth were aggressive traders who resented the Kaleth Empire's dominance. Ambassador Grax was large, even for a Kroth, and he was clearly angry about something. "Princess Lyria," Grax said, his voice rough. He stepped directly into her path. "I hear your empire plans to undercut our trade agreements. This is not acceptable." Lyria straightened. "Ambassador Grax, if you have concerns, you may raise them in the proper forum." "I raise them now." He moved closer. His size was meant to intimidate. In Kaleth culture, Lyria would have responded with aggression, shown her own strength, but before she could speak, Jake stepped forward. He did not push between them, did not draw a weapon, did not shout. He simply moved to stand at an angle that placed him partially in front of Lyria, and he spoke in that same calm voice. "Ambassador Grax, I understand you're concerned about trade negotiations. That's completely reasonable. But Princess Lyria has a schedule to keep. If you'd like to arrange a formal meeting, I can help coordinate that through the proper channels." Grax looked down at Jake. The human was half his size. "You think you can stop me, little human? I think you're a professional diplomat who understands that hallway confrontations aren't the best way to conduct business." Jake's voice never changed, never threatened. "And I think you're smart enough to know that forcing this issue right now won't get you what you want." There was a long moment of silence. Lyria watched, frozen. This was not how her people would handle this. A Kaleth warrior would have made threats, displayed power, forced submission. Jake did none of those things, yet somehow Grax stepped back. "Fine, we will speak in the proper forum." The Kroth ambassador turned and walked away. Lyria stared at Jake. "How did you do that?" "Do what?" He looked genuinely confused. He was aggressive. You should have..." She did not know how to finish the sentence. You should have dominated him. You should have made him submit. But Jake had done something else entirely. He had simply redirected the situation with words and calm presence. Oh, that. Jake shrugged. Conflict resolution is part of security training. Most problems can be solved without violence if you give people a way to back down without losing face. Give people a way to back down. The concept felt alien to her. In Kaleth culture, backing down was weakness, yet what Jake did had been effective, more effective than threats would have been. That is unusual, she finally said. Maybe, but it works. He smiled slightly. Shall we continue the tour? They walked on, but Lyria's mind churned. That afternoon, during another rest period, she found herself seeking Jake out. He was standing near a viewport, looking at the stars. She approached before she could question the decision. Sergeant Morrison. He turned. Princess, do you need something? I am curious about Earth. The words felt clumsy in her mouth. Your planet, what is it like? Jake seemed surprised by the question, but answered readily. It's beautiful. Dangerous, too. We have extreme weather, lots of predators, heavy gravity. But there are mountains and oceans and forests, every environment you can imagine. And this made humans strong? In some ways, it taught us to adapt, to work together. One human alone can't survive much, but a group of humans working together can survive almost anything. Working together. Cooperation instead of individual dominance. Another strange human concept. Lyria found herself asking more questions about human culture, their history, their way of thinking. Jake answered each question patiently, and for once, she managed to keep her voice steady. Almost. When she returned to her quarters that evening, her attendants were waiting with worried expressions. The eldest, Kira, spoke first. Your Highness, we must speak plainly. Your behavior around the human is inappropriate. Lyria felt her skin flush. I have done nothing inappropriate. You seek him out. You ask him questions. Your colors shift when he is near. Kira's voice was gentle but firm. In our culture, this shows weakness. A princess must maintain perfect control. I am maintaining control. Are you? Kira stepped closer. Because we see someone who is losing herself to fascination with an inferior species. This is not worthy of your station. The words stung because they were partially true, but Lyria thought about Jake standing calmly before an aggressive ambassador twice his size. She thought about how he helped the maintenance worker without being asked, how he treated everyone with the same respectful courtesy. Perhaps, Lyria said slowly, our definition of strength needs examination. Kira's eyes widened. Your Highness, leave me. I wish to be alone. When they had gone, Lyria stood before the mirror again. Her skin showed colors she normally kept hidden. Confusion, curiosity, and beneath it all something warm and persistent that frightened her more than any warrior ever had. She thought about Jake's words, about cooperation instead of domination, about solving problems without violence, about giving people dignity even in defeat. These were not Kaleth values. These were not things she had been taught to admire. So why did they feel more like true strength than anything she had learned in all her years of training? Lyria touched her reflection in the mirror and made a decision. She would not avoid Jake. She would study him, learn about these humans and their strange ways. It was merely intellectual curiosity, research, nothing more. But when she closed her eyes to sleep, she knew she was lying to herself again. The explosion came without warning. One moment, Lyria was walking through the diplomatic corridor with Jake and several other delegates, discussing the day's negotiations. The next moment, the world turned into fire and noise and chaos. The blast threw her against the wall. Her ears rang. Smoke filled the air, making it hard to see or breathe. She tried to stand, but her legs would not cooperate. Around her, she heard screaming and the sound of alarms blaring throughout the station. Strong hands gripped her arms, pulling her upright. Jake's face appeared through the smoke. "Princess, are you hurt?" She shook her head, not trusting her voice. Her body ached, but nothing felt broken. Jake quickly checked her over, then turned to help an injured Vrix delegate who had fallen nearby. His movements were quick but calm, as if explosions happened every day. "Everyone who can move, head to the emergency shelter," Jake called out. His voice cut through the panic. "Support anyone who needs help. Stay together." More explosions sounded in the distance. The station shuddered. Emergency lights flickered on, casting everything in red. A Kaleth warrior from Lyria's security detail pushed forward, his voice harsh with command. "I will lead us to safety. Everyone follow me." The warrior, Drax, was large and experienced. In Kaleth culture, the strongest warrior naturally took charge. But as Drax started to move forward down a corridor, Jake spoke up. "Wait! That corridor leads past the station's main power junctions. If there are more explosives, that's where they'd be placed." Drax spun on him. "You question my leadership, human? I'm questioning the route. There's a safer path through the maintenance tunnels." "Maintenance tunnels are beneath a warrior's dignity." "Dignity won't matter if we're dead." Jake's voice remained calm despite the danger and Drax's obvious anger. Drax moved closer, using his size to intimidate. Lyria watched, her hearts pounding. This was the moment, the dominance challenge. In Kaleth culture, Jake should submit or fight. Instead, he did something completely unexpected. "You're right that we need strong leadership," Jake said. "And you're the obvious choice as the ranking military officer in this group. I'm just offering tactical information about the station layout. You make the call." It was brilliant. Jake acknowledged Drax's authority while still presenting the problem. He gave Drax a way to accept the better route without losing face. Lyria held her breath, waiting to see if it would work. Drax hesitated. His training said to dominate, but his intelligence said Jake was right about the danger. Finally, he nodded. "The human makes a valid point. We take the maintenance route." They moved quickly through the damaged station. Jake and Drax worked together now, Jake providing information about the station while Drax gave orders. The group consisted of about 15 beings from various species, including Lyria, Ambassador Vex, and several other delegates. The maintenance tunnels were narrow and dark. They had to move single file in places. Another explosion rocked the station, closer this time. Parts of the ceiling collapsed behind them, cutting off their escape route. "Keep moving forward," Jake said. He had taken position at the back of the group, making sure no one fell behind. Lyria found herself in the middle of the line, hating that she could not see him from where she walked. They emerged into a larger section that had once been a storage area. Now half of it was open to space, atmosphere held back only by emergency force fields that flickered and sparked. They would have to cross to reach the next corridor. "The fields are failing," Vex said, his voice tight with fear. "We need to move fast." "One at a time," Drax ordered. "Keep to the left side where the field looks strongest." The delegates began crossing. Each person made it safely, though the force field flickered more with each crossing. When Lyria's turn came, she stepped onto the narrow path. Halfway across, the field made a sound like tearing cloth. She looked down and saw space below her, stars spinning in the void. Fear froze her in place. Her training screamed at her to show no weakness, but her body would not move. Then Jake was there, having followed right behind her despite being supposed to wait his turn. "Look at me, Princess. Not down. At me." She lifted her eyes to his, brown and steady and calm. "You're going to walk forward. I'm right behind you. 3 more steps and you're across." "The field is holding, but we need to move now. Can you do that?" It was not a command. It was a question. as if he trusted her to make the choice, as if he believed she could do it. Lyria took a breath and stepped forward, then another, then one more. Her feet found solid ground on the other side. Jake followed immediately. As his foot left the crossing point, the force field collapsed completely. The storage area opened to space with a rush of air. Emergency bulkheads slammed down, sealing the corridor. "That was close," someone muttered. "Too close," Vex agreed. "We need to find a way to the main shelter." They pressed on, but the path ahead was blocked by collapsed walls. Jake studied their options with a small portable scanner. "There's an auxiliary route through the environmental systems. It's tight, but it should get us there." The environmental tunnels were barely large enough for one person to squeeze through. They had to crawl single file through dust and debris. Lyria's fine robes were ruined, her skin was scratched, and she had never felt more undignified in her life. Yet somehow it did not matter. Survival mattered. They were halfway through when the tunnel began to buckle. Support beams groaned. Atmosphere hissed out through cracks. Jake, at the rear again, shouted forward, "Move faster! This section is failing!" Lyria crawled as quickly as she could. Behind her, she heard Jake helping an elderly delegate who was struggling. The tunnel shook violently. Ahead, she could see the exit, a bright opening into a larger corridor. The others were emerging, reaching safety. Lyria pulled herself out and turned back. Only two beings remained in the tunnel. The elderly delegate emerged next, gasping, but Jake was still inside, and the tunnel was collapsing. "Jake!" The name tore out of her throat before she could stop it. Not Sergeant Morrison, not human, just Jake. "Go!" he yelled back. "Get to safety!" "No!" Lyria moved toward the tunnel entrance. "Come out now! I can make it, but you need to clear the area. The collapse could spread." Drax grabbed her arm, trying to pull her back. She shook him off with strength born of panic. All her royal training, all her composure, all her carefully controlled behavior shattered in that moment. "Jake Morrison, if you die in there, I will find a way to bring you back just so I can kill you myself. Move!" She heard a sound that might have been a laugh. Then Jake appeared, crawling fast as the tunnel disintegrated behind him. He pulled himself out just as the entire section collapsed. He lay on the floor, breathing hard, covered in dust. Lyria dropped to her knees beside him. Her hands shook as she checked him for injuries. Her skin blazed through every color imaginable. She did not care who saw. Did not care about dignity or royal protocol or what anyone would think. "You fool!" she said, and her voice broke. "You complete fool!" Jake looked up at her, surprised by the raw emotion in her voice. "I'm okay, Princess. Everyone's safe." "You stayed behind. You always stay behind. You protect everyone else and forget about yourself." "It's my job." "Your job." She felt tears threatening, something she had not done since childhood. "Is your life worth so little that you throw it away for your job?" He sat up slowly, his expression serious now. "My life is worth exactly as much as anyone else's, no more, no less. That's the point." The simple statement hit her like a physical blow. In Kaleth culture, some lives were worth more than others. Royalty above warriors, warriors above workers. But Jake truly believed what he said. His life equal to hers. Hers equal to his. Equal to everyone's. "You are..." She could not find words. "You are not what I expected humans to be. What did you expect? Not this. Not you." She realized she was still gripping his arm. Her skin was still showing every emotion she felt. Everyone in the group was staring at them. She did not care. "I do not understand you, Jake Morrison." "That's okay." He stood and offered her his hand. "We can figure it out together, after we reach safety." She took his hand and let him pull her up. Her fingers stayed in his longer than necessary. When she finally let go, it felt like losing something important. They reached the main shelter without further incident. Emergency teams were organizing survivors. Medical personnel rushed to help the injured. The immediate crisis was over, but Lyria knew something fundamental had changed inside her. She stood in a corner, trying to calm her racing hearts, trying to force her skin back to proper royal purple. It would not cooperate. Behind her, she heard her attendants and Ambassador Vex whispering in shocked voices about her behavior. Let them whisper. She had spent her entire life maintaining perfect composure, showing no weakness, displaying no emotion, and in one moment of terror and relief, all of it had crumbled. She had shown everyone exactly what she felt. The strange thing was, she did not regret it, not one bit. The medical bay was crowded with survivors. Lyria sat on an examination table while a medical technician scanned her for injuries. Minor cuts and bruises. Nothing serious. But her attendants stood nearby with expressions of deep concern that had nothing to do with physical injuries. Across the room, Jake sat on another table, refusing treatment until the medical team had checked everyone else first. Of course he did. Lyria watched him through the crowd, unable to look away. "Princess Lyria!" Ambassador Vex's voice was low and urgent. He moved to block her view of Jake. "We must speak, immediately." She wanted to refuse, wanted to tell him to leave her alone, but years of training made her nod and follow him to a private corner of the medical bay. Her attendants formed a protective circle around them. "Your behavior during the crisis was unacceptable," Vex said without preamble. "I survived. Everyone survived. That is not the issue." Vex's skin showed deep purple, almost black with disapproval. "You showed raw emotion in front of subordinates and allies alike. You used the human's personal name. You touched him. You admitted fear. This is not the behavior of Kaleth royalty." Lyria felt her skin warm with anger. "I helped my people reach safety. That is exactly the behavior of royalty. You lost control." Kira, her lead attendant, spoke gently but firmly. "We understand the crisis was frightening, but a princess must maintain dignity even in danger, especially in danger. You showed weakness before other species." "I showed concern for a person's life." "For a human's life," Vex corrected. "An inferior species, a being far below your station, and you displayed emotional attachment that everyone witnessed. Do you understand what this means politically? The other delegations will see it as a sign that the Kaleth are weakening, that our royalty can be swayed by sentiment." "Perhaps they should," Lyria said quietly. The silence that followed was thick with shock. Vex stared at her as if she had grown a second head. Kira's mouth opened and closed without sound. "Princess," Vex finally managed, "you cannot mean that." "I watched that human coordinate the rescue of 15 beings from 6 different species. I watched him defer to Drax's leadership while still providing critical information. I watched him ensure everyone's safety before his own." Lyria met their eyes steadily. "Tell me how that is weakness." "He did his duty, as any warrior would." "No, not as any warrior would. A Kaleth warrior would have dominated, would have forced submission. Jake did something different, something that worked better." "You are confused from the trauma," Kira said. "You need rest. In the morning, you will see things clearly again." "I see clearly now, perhaps for the first time." Lyria straightened her spine. The human showed a different kind of strength, one that does not require others to be weak, one that lifts up rather than pushes down, and I find myself questioning whether our way is truly superior. "This is heresy," Vex hissed. "The Kaleth way has sustained our empire for thousands of years. Perhaps it is time for our empire to learn new ways." Before Vex could respond, the medical staff cleared them to leave. Lyria took the opportunity to escape the conversation. She needed to speak to Jake, needed to thank him properly, needed to understand what was happening inside her own hearts. She found him in the recovery area, finally allowing a medic to treat a cut on his arm. When he saw her approaching, he stood immediately. "Princess, are you all right? The medic said you were fine, but—" "I am fine." The words came out too fast. She took a breath and tried again. "Thanks to you. Thanks to your leadership and knowledge and—" She struggled to find the right words. "You saved us all. I was just doing my job." He seemed genuinely puzzled by her intensity. "No, it was more than that." She stepped closer, aware that people were watching but not caring. "You risked your life. You stayed behind to help others. You gave that elderly delegate your own oxygen supply when hers was failing. I saw you. Anyone would have done the same." "That is not true. And even if it were, you still did it. You matter, Jake Morrison. Your life matters." He looked at her for a long moment, and she saw something shift in his expression. Realization, maybe. Understanding. "Thank you, Princess. That means a lot." She wanted to say more, wanted to tell him that watching him in danger had torn something open inside her, that she could not stop thinking about him, that his quiet strength had changed something fundamental in how she saw the universe. But the words would not come. Her courage had limits. "I should return to my quarters," she said instead. "But I wanted to tell you. I wanted you to know." "I know," he said softly. And maybe he did. Maybe he saw more than she realized. She turned and walked away before she could do something foolish like cry or confess feelings she barely understood herself. Her attendants followed in disapproving silence. That night, Lyria could not sleep. She stood by her window, watching ships come and go from the station. Her mind replayed the day's events over and over, the explosions, the fear, Jake's calm voice guiding them through danger, the moment she thought she might lose him and felt her carefully constructed world collapse. A chime at her door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find Drax, the Kaleth warrior who had worked with Jake during the crisis. "Forgive the intrusion, Your Highness. May I speak with you?" She gestured him inside, curious. Drax had served in her security detail for years, but had never requested a private audience. "I wanted to tell you something about the human," Drax said without preamble. "Today, during the crisis, he did something I have never seen before." "What do you mean?" "When I wanted to take the dangerous route, he could have challenged me, could have fought for dominance. Instead, he gave me a way to choose the safer path without losing face. He made me stronger by working with me, not against me." Drax's skin showed the purple of deep thought. "I have been thinking about this, about what it means. And what does it mean? That perhaps strength can take many forms. I was raised to believe that dominance was the only true power, but watching the human lead without dominating, protect without conquering, it has made me question my assumptions." Lyria felt her hearts warm. "You are not the only one questioning, Drax. I saw how you looked at him, Your Highness. Some would call it weakness. I think it might be courage." After Drax left, Lyria returned to the window. Courage. Was that what this feeling was? The courage to admit that everything she had been taught might not be the only truth? The courage to acknowledge that a human soldier had shown her a better way? The courage to accept that she was falling in love with someone she was supposed to consider inferior? The thought settled over her like a physical weight. Love. That was the name for this feeling that made her skin shift colors, and her voice stumble, and her heart's race. She was in love with Jake Morrison. The realization should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like freedom. In the morning, Lyria made a decision. She requested a meeting with the station's diplomatic coordinator and put in a formal request. She wanted Jake assigned as a cultural liaison to the Kaleth Empire. It was a transparent excuse to keep him close, and everyone would know it. But she did not care. When Ambassador Vex found out, he was furious. This is madness. You cannot bring a human to the homeworld. The council will never accept it. Your family will be scandalized. Then they will be scandalized. Lyria kept her voice calm, but firm. I am princess of the Kaleth Empire. I have the authority to request diplomatic personnel. I am using that authority. Everyone will know why you are doing this. Good. Let them know. I am tired of hiding. Vex stared at her. You have changed, Your Highness. The princess I knew would never behave this way. Perhaps the princess you knew needed to change. She met his gaze steadily. Perhaps we all do. Word of her request spread quickly through the diplomatic circles. Lyria could feel the stares and whispers wherever she went. Some species looked at her with amusement. Others with confusion. Her own delegation was divided between those who thought she had lost her mind and those who, like Drax, were quietly reconsidering their own beliefs. She did not care about any of it. She only cared about Jake's answer. Would he accept, or would he refuse, preferring to stay with his own people? The answer came that evening. Jake requested to speak with her privately. They met in one of the station's quiet observation lounges, away from prying eyes. Princess, he said, and she noticed he was nervous. She had never seen him nervous before. I heard about your request, for me to come to the Kaleth Empire as a liaison. Yes, I understand if you prefer to decline. That's not... I need to understand why. Why me? There are more experienced diplomats, better qualified people. She looked at him, this human who had changed everything. Because you showed me a different way to be strong, because you lead without dominating, because you protect without conquering, because when I watch you, I see the kind of leader I want to be. Princess. Lyria, she interrupted. When we are alone, please call me Lyria. He smiled slightly. Lyria, I think you're already that kind of leader. You just needed someone to show you it was possible. Will you come? To my world? He was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the stars. Then he turned back to her. Yes, I'll come. I can't promise I'll be good at it, but I'll try. Relief and joy flooded through her. Her skin blazed with colors she did not bother to hide. Thank you. Can I ask you something? He stepped closer. Why does this matter so much to you? Really? She could lie. Could give him political reasons or diplomatic excuses, but she had decided to stop hiding. Because when I thought you might die in that tunnel, I realized something. I realized that I care about you more than I care about my image or my culture's rules or what anyone thinks. And that terrifies me, but it also feels like the truest thing I have ever felt. Jake's eyes widened slightly. Lyria, you do not have to say anything. I just needed you to know. I think, he said slowly, that we should probably talk about this more, about what it means, about how different our species are. Yes, we should talk. We have time now. She smiled, feeling lighter than she had in days. You will be coming home with me. They stood together at the viewport, looking out at the stars, and for the first time since meeting him, Lyria felt perfectly at peace. Her composure had crumbled, her royal mask had shattered, and she had never felt stronger. The final days on Zenith Prime passed in a strange blur. The peace talks concluded successfully. Several species, impressed by how the crisis had been handled, signed cooperation agreements. Jake's role in the rescue had not gone unnoticed. The human delegation received commendations, and Captain Lisa Chen, Jake's commanding officer, watched the developments with knowing eyes. Jake found himself called to Captain Chen's quarters one evening. She was a stern woman with sharp intelligence and years of experience in first contact situations. Sit down, Morrison, she said, pouring 2 glasses of earth whiskey. We need to talk. Yes, ma'am. I approved your transfer to the cultural liaison position with the Kaleth Empire. She slid a glass across to him. Care to explain why a Kaleth princess specifically requested you? Jake shifted uncomfortably. I think she values human perspectives on leadership and conflict resolution. Uh-huh. And that's the only reason? Chen raised an eyebrow. Jake, I've been watching you two. The way she looks at you. The way you watch her when you think no one is paying attention. I need to know if you understand what you're getting into. He stopped, took a breath. I'm not sure I do, but I know she matters to me, more than she probably should. Chen nodded slowly. She's royalty of a major galactic power. You're a sergeant from a species that just achieved FTL 5 years ago. The cultural differences alone are massive. I know, ma'am. But you're going anyway. Yes, ma'am. Chen smiled slightly. Good. Because someone needs to show these established species that humans are more than just newcomers. And if anyone can do it while keeping a princess off balance, it's you. Just promise me you'll be careful. Politics at that level can be deadly. I promise. And Morrison? For what it's worth, I think you made the right call. She's different because of you. That matters. Jake left the meeting feeling both encouraged and terrified. The next day, he attended the farewell reception for all departing delegations. He wore his dress uniform and tried not to feel overwhelmed by the crowd of alien dignitaries. Lyria found him standing near one of the viewports. She wore formal royal robes in deep purple and silver, her skin carefully controlled to show perfect composure. But when she looked at him, her colors flickered slightly. Sergeant Morrison, she said formally. Too many people were nearby for casual conversation. Princess Lyria. He gave a respectful nod. I wanted to thank you once more for your service during the crisis. Your actions reflected well on your species. Just doing my job, Your Highness. They spoke in careful, formal tones, but their eyes said different things. Hers promised that they would have time to really talk soon. His reassured her that he understood and was ready. The following morning, all delegations prepared to depart. Jake said goodbye to Captain Chen and his fellow soldiers. They gave him good-natured grief about being assigned to an alien princess, but he could see the respect beneath the teasing. He was representing humanity in a new way. The responsibility felt heavy. He boarded the Kaleth vessel with his single travel bag. The ship was massive, built for war as much as diplomacy. The crew were all warriors, tall and imposing, and they watched him with barely concealed curiosity. A human on a Kaleth ship was unprecedented. Lyria met him in the diplomatic section. Away from the crowds of the station, her composure slipped slightly. Her skin showed warmer tones. Welcome aboard, she said. Your quarters are this way. She led him through corridors of gleaming metal and crystal. The ship was beautiful in a harsh, aggressive way, very different from human vessels. I should warn you, Lyria said as they walked, my people will not all be welcoming. Many believe humans are too primitive to have value. You will face prejudice. I figured as much. And my family. She paused outside a door. My parents are traditional. They believe in the old ways, dominance, hierarchy. They will not understand why I requested you. Will they try to send me away? They will try. She met his eyes. I will not let them, but it will be difficult. Lyria, why are you really doing this? You could have requested any liaison, someone who would fit in better with your culture. She was quiet for a moment, her skin shifting through colors that he was learning to read. Uncertainty, determination, and something else, something warm. Because you are the first person who made me question everything I was taught. Because watching you lead made me want to be better. Because... She stopped, took a breath. Because I need to understand these feelings. And I cannot do that if you are light years away. What feelings? He kept his voice gentle. The ones that make my skin change colors when you are near. The ones that make my hearts race when you speak. The ones that made me panic when I thought you might die. She looked away. I believe humans call it attraction. Possibly more. Jake felt his own heart beat faster. I feel it too. I didn't want to say anything because of who you are, what you are. But yeah, I feel it. Her skin blazed with color. Joy, he thought. Hope. This is complicated. Very complicated. We are different species, different cultures. You do not even know if we are compatible in that way. Probably not. At least not physically. He smiled slightly. But that's not the only kind of compatibility that matters. No, it is not. She touched his hand briefly, a gesture that felt monumental given her culture's normal restraint. We have time to learn, time to understand. That is what I want. Time with you. The journey to the Kaleth homeworld took 3 days. Jake spent the time learning about Kaleth culture, studying their history and customs. Lyria visited his quarters each evening, and they talked for hours. She told him about growing up royal, the pressure to be perfect, the loneliness of maintaining constant composure. He told her about Earth, about human wars, and the slow progress toward cooperation, about the concept that strength could mean protecting the weak rather than dominating them. On Earth, Jake explained one evening, we have a saying, the strongest person in the room is the one who can control themselves, not the one who controls others. Lyria considered this. That is almost the opposite of Kaleth teaching. Maybe. But think about what you admire in leaders. Is it really the ones who force submission, or the ones who inspire people to follow willingly? The latter. But I was taught those leaders are weak. Are they? Or did whoever taught you that want to make sure you never question their own dominance? The question clearly shook her. Jake could see her mind working, reassessing beliefs she had held her whole life. It was not an easy process, but she faced it with courage. On the 3rd day, they reached the Kaleth homeworld. Jake stood beside Lyria on the bridge as the planet came into view. It was beautiful, with purple oceans and golden continents. 3 moons orbiting in perfect synchronization. Home, Lyria said softly. Her skin showed complex colors, joy at returning, nervousness about what came next. Are you ready for this? Jake asked. No, but I am doing it anyway. Is that not what courage is? He smiled. Yeah, that's exactly what courage is. They landed at the royal spaceport. As they descended the ramp, Jake saw hundreds of Kaleth waiting. Soldiers, courtiers, royalty, all watching with intense curiosity. At the front stood 2 imposing figures who could only be Lyria's parents, the Emperor and Empress of the Kaleth Empire. Lyria walked forward with perfect posture, every inch a princess. Jake followed at the appropriate, respectful distance. When they reached her parents, Lyria gave a formal bow. Father, Mother, I have returned. The Emperor looked at Jake with cold assessment. And you have brought a human. This requires explanation, daughter. He is a cultural liaison, approved through proper diplomatic channels. We know what he is, officially. The Empress's voice was sharp. We want to know what he is to you. The whole Empire has heard about your behavior on the station, your loss of composure, your emotional display. Lyria straightened. Jake saw her skin want to shift with nervousness, saw her fight to control it. Then, deliberately, she let the colors show. Let everyone see her feelings. He is someone who showed me a different way to lead. Someone who taught me that strength comes in many forms. Someone who matters to me. And I will not hide that. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The Emperor's skin darkened with anger. But before he could speak, Lyria continued. I know this challenges our traditions. I know it makes me seem weak by our standards, but perhaps our standards need to change. Perhaps there is wisdom in other ways of thinking, ways that do not require constant domination, ways that build up rather than tear down. You speak heresy, her father said. I speak truth, my truth. She glanced back at Jake. He risked his life for strangers. He led without dominating. He showed me that power and compassion are not opposites, and if that makes me weak in your eyes, so be it. But I believe it makes me stronger. The silence stretched. Jake held his breath, wondering if this was the moment everything fell apart. Then, surprisingly, the Emperor's expression shifted, not to approval exactly, but to something like grudging respect. You have courage, daughter, even if it is misguided. He looked at Jake directly for the first time. Human. You have influenced my daughter greatly. This can be opportunity or disaster. Which will it be? Jake stepped forward. Your Majesty, I can't promise my presence won't cause change, but I can promise I'll always act with respect for your culture while honestly sharing my own. If that's disaster in your eyes, I understand. But I think Lyria sees it as opportunity, and I think she might be right. Another long silence. Then the Emperor nodded once. We will see. You are granted permission to stay. For now. Prove your worth, human, or you will be sent away. Thank you, Your Majesty. I'll do my best. As the formal reception concluded and the crowd dispersed, Lyria and Jake found a moment alone in one of the palace gardens. The purple sky was darkening into night, and 3 moons rose over the horizon. That went better than I expected, Lyria said. He did not immediately exile you. Setting the bar pretty low there, she laughed, the sound free and genuine. I suppose I am, but we survived the first hurdle. There will be many more. I know. Your culture doesn't accept what we have, whatever we have. No, but they will learn to accept it, or I will change their minds. I am princess of this empire, and I will use that power. She looked at him seriously. This will not be easy, Jake Morrison. There will be those who try to separate us, who will call me weak for caring about you, who will say you are using me for political gain. Probably. Does that frighten you? Terrifies me, but I'm here anyway. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she did not, he took her hand. Her skin was warm, and it shifted to bright colors at his touch. Because what you said on the ship was true. I feel it too. Whatever this is between us, it's worth fighting for. Even if it means changing 2 entire cultures, because that is what we are doing. We are proof that humans and Caliph can care for each other. That will challenge everything both our peoples believe. Then we challenge them. Together. Lyria smiled, and it was the most genuine expression he had seen on her face. No royal composure, no careful control, just pure happiness. Together. I like that word. They stood in the garden as the night deepened, hands joined, looking up at 3 moons and countless stars. Somewhere up there was Earth, and somewhere around them was the Caliph Empire. 2 cultures about to learn that strength came in many forms, and that sometimes the bravest thing was to admit you had been wrong. Princess Lyria had finally stopped struggling to maintain her composure, and in doing so, she had found something better. Honesty, connection, love, the courage to be herself, even when herself was messy and emotional and imperfect. Jake had shown her that, and now they would show both their peoples, not by dominating or demanding, but by simply being who they were, together. The future would be complicated, difficult, full of challenges and opposition. But as Jake looked at Lyria, her skin glowing with colors that told him everything he needed to know, he thought maybe complicated was worth it. Maybe difficult was just another word for meaningful. Maybe the best things in life required fighting for. and he had never been afraid of a good fight, especially when he had someone worth fighting beside. "Come on," Lyria said, gently squeezing his hand. "I want to show you my home, all of it, the beautiful parts and the difficult parts, who I was and who I want to become. I'd like that." They walked back toward the palace together, a princess who had learned to show her feelings and a soldier who had taught her it was okay to do so. Behind them, the garden's flowers swayed in the evening breeze, and above them, the stars shone down on two people who had decided that love was stronger than culture, connection was more powerful than tradition, and that sometimes the most courageous thing you could do was simply admit you cared. The story was just beginning, but it was already changing everything.